has long been synonymous with freedom of speech. They defended it from even the most hated groups like the Nazis, the Klan, even the Jehovah's Witnesses. It was never about what you were saying. It was about the liberal principle of your right to say it. Well, they have new guidelines now, namely that before taking a case, ACL lawyers should consider if the case might cause offense to marginalized groups, or if a potential client's values are contrary to our values. Contrary to our values? Your values are free speech and the First Amendment. Those are your values. Your whole purpose in life is not to be worried about offense to marginalized groups, because we understand that free speech is an even more important value than never being offended.
You would think that with the decline of the woke movement, the corporations that embraced it so enthusiastically would finally start reconsidering their choices. Some have, but many continue pushing the same unpopular ideas that damage their reputations and hurt their bottom lines. Enter Bill Maher, a vocal critic of woke culture who has made it his mission to challenge what remains of the trend. And he didn't limit his criticism to private conversations. He took the issue directly to a national audience, calling out what he sees as blatant hypocrisy on live television. Let's get started.
Of what you always were, you have to change your name. It's become a trend in America these days, morphing into something completely different from what you were founded as, but still pretending you're the old you. TLC stands for the Learning Channel. They used to have shows like Learn to Read and Ready, Set, Learn. Here's some of their present and recent offerings. Cake Boss, Gypsy Sisters, Toddlers and Tiaras, Extreme Couponing, What Not to Wear, My Teen is Pregnant and So Am I. 1,000-Pound Sisters and Alaskan Women Looking for Love. And that's just the shows about the Palins.
Maher begins by criticizing TLC for drifting away from the purpose that originally defined the Learning Channel. What was once a network focused on education and personal growth has, in his view, transformed into a showcase of modern cultural absurdities. Educational programming and informative documentaries have largely disappeared. In their place are shows that celebrate unhealthy lifestyles, encourage family dysfunction, and promote the idea that relationships should be based primarily on political agreement. Maher's argument is straightforward. TLC didn't merely change direction. It abandoned the values that made it successful, replacing substance and authenticity with trend-chasing and virtue signaling. In his eyes, it represents a larger problem throughout corporate America.
A&E stands for arts. Seriously, they used to show the symphony. Now they have Deep Fried Dynasty, Hoarders, Storage Wars, Ghost Hunters, and Psychic Kids. You know, for people who find the Learning Channel too intellectual.
A&E also joined the trend. Once recognized as arts and entertainment, the network today looks very different from the brand many viewers remember. According to critics, artistic programming and meaningful documentaries have increasingly been replaced by content driven by political messaging. Instead of focusing on creativity and thoughtful storytelling, the network often prioritizes themes that align with modern ideological trends. Maher argues that what was once a destination for culture and artistic expression has become another example of institutions sacrificing authenticity for activism. For him, it demonstrates how even entertainment companies have become deeply entangled in ongoing cultural battles.
The channel has no history, and MTV has no music. I'm just saying, you can buy a petting zoo and turn it into a bondage dungeon, but you gotta change the sign.
Maher's criticism targets what he sees as a major contradiction. These networks continue benefiting from brand identities built decades ago, while producing content that no longer reflects those original missions. If A&E is no longer centered on arts and culture, he argues, then the name itself becomes misleading. The same criticism applies to TLC. If education is no longer the focus, then the title no longer matches the product. Maher's broader point is that organizations should either remain faithful to their founding principles or acknowledge that they have moved on. Otherwise, they risk becoming little more than shadows of what they once represented.
Put a gay man on the cover, which I guess we're supposed to celebrate, even though it was 2021 and there's already a dozen magazines for gay guys, 13 if you count Martha Stewart Living. Do we really need LGBT representation in Playboy? There's a transgender teenager on every show on television except reruns of Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea.
Beyond television networks, Maher also points to Playboy as an example of a company that dramatically altered its public image. The magazine built its reputation around a specific vision of masculinity, lifestyle, and entertainment. Over time, however, it adopted messaging intended to appeal to broader social and political movements, including support for LGBTQ representation. Critics argue that this shift appeared less like genuine conviction and more like an attempt to follow cultural trends. Maher's view is that brands often abandon their core identities in pursuit of approval and relevance. When that happens, they can end up confusing or alienating the audience that originally supported them.
The Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue, which now celebrates all kind of bodies except, the good kind. Was it really such a crime against humanity to have one magazine once a year that was about finding creative ways for supermodels to hide their... Now it looks like it's edited by the Huffington Post. Jeez, you have every other magazine. Do you hate Dad that much?
According to this perspective, a major part of the cultural shift involved changing how masculinity and femininity are discussed in society. Traditional masculine traits are frequently portrayed in a negative light, while criticism of femininity is often viewed as unacceptable. Terms like toxic masculinity became widely used, leading some people to believe that normal male characteristics were increasingly being treated as social problems. Maher argues that popular culture reinforces this idea through television and media portrayals that often depict fathers as incompetent while presenting mothers as consistently capable and wise. In his opinion, the issue moved beyond equality and became an effort to redefine masculinity itself.
Valentine's Day, which was always a day to celebrate coupledom. It wasn't complicated. Flowers, chocolates, blowjob. And yet, every year now, I more and more hear this idea that Valentine's Day is also a day to celebrate being alone. Be your own Valentine. That's right, on the one day was specifically set aside to honor bonding between two people. Don't do that. Make it about the opposite of that. Be your own Valentine. Get your own cheap, stale chocolates at CVS.
Next, Maher turned his attention to Valentine's Day, and his observations were both humorous and critical. A holiday traditionally associated with romance, affection, and meaningful relationships has, in his view, been reshaped by modern cultural attitudes. Rather than encouraging people to seek connection, some messages now celebrate independence and single life as ideals in themselves. Maher mocked the notion that wanting companionship should be viewed as a weakness or a sign of dependence. To him, the shift reflects another example of how traditional values and social norms are increasingly being challenged and reinterpreted.